So Chag Sameach once again to everyone. Happy feast of unleavened bread. I pray you all had a great Seder, a great Passover festival last night. I pray your first day of unleavened bread has been a blessing. This is also the beginning of our count to Chag Shavuot, the festival of Pentecost, or the festival of weeks. And so today begins one. So 49 days from today, we once again will have another appointed time. So this goes back to Parashat Bo, which is to go out. But as we deal with chapter 12 of Exodus, what do we notice Israel has to do in order for them to receive the promise of this redemption? What has to take place for Israel to experience the mighty deliverance of Yah, his finger, his hand, and his arm, for the deliverance of Israel from this bondage that they were in? Any thoughts? What does Israel have to do to experience God's salvation? Aside, sit up.
Well, go ahead.
Go ahead, brother.
Well, I was saying, well, they have to make a sacrifice.
That's one. So what does that require to make the sacrifice? What do they have to do to make the sacrifice?
Well, they have to follow instructions. They have to obey.
There it is. One of the clearest instructions that Yah gives for us is to be obedient. Now, here's the question. How did they know what to do? Because there could be a lot of instruction. It could be a lot of people telling you, this is what you need, this is what you need to do. How do you know what Yah is telling you to do?
Well, they have faith in Moses.
Okay.
Moses, it came through Moses.
Okay.
And so they had to recognize him. They had to humble themselves and recognize him as the vessel that Yah chose to speak through.
And that's a great point. But think about this. What lets us know someone is actually the messenger of Yah? How do we know someone is bringing Yah's message? How do we know that the instructions and the words that someone is speaking are in fact representing Yah or not? Like, how do we know this?
Well, that's through a couple of ways. One is just if they're living by and it's lining up. Two, they have to know Torah themselves.
There you go.
Or they won't be able to do it.
There you go. That's huge. That's very huge. Torah for that, Imali Oriah, what were you gonna say?
Oh, I was just saying that they had to make the sacrifice, but they also had to take that other step of placing the blood, using the branch, and placing the blood over their doorpost.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. Very much so. So that's another act of obedience. But think about what that took from them, coming from where they were. Whose commands, whose instructions, whose decrees were they following prior to this?
Well,
they were following Egypt.
Exactly.
They were following Pharaoh.
Exactly.
But prior to, they had also seen 9 different plagues.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So they should have, be like, hey, I've been warned that something could kick off at any time. So I mean, he has sent 9 before.
I mean, and yes, that being the case, it's powerful. Think about what happens in the wilderness. They rebelled soon as they get into the wilderness. So were those plagues enough to convince them of their absolute allegiance and loyalty to Yah?
Nope, not at all. I mean,
so
because
that's the point.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, it's just because of who Israel is and has always been historically. You never can. I mean, no matter how many times they're delivered, we are delivered. Each time we get tested, we start, backtracking, doubting, and that's where that fear and anxiety that is not of Yah comes into play. And the more, which takes a toll on you, and it never really works out anyway.
Right.
I mean, no matter, it's going to work out anyway. How it's going to work out, no matter what. Is what I'm saying. So whether you worry about it or not, half the time, a lot of times it's not even as bad as you worry about. Sometimes, just depends. But that's how we are. That's how we've always been.
Right.
Stiff neck, no matter what, it's never enough. But they should have seen with the 9 plagues that came before.
Right.
That, I mean, if they had any sense, but sometimes they don't. I mean, so they weren't students of history, obviously, or they didn't give it any merit.
Say loud. But let's really practically look at this on top of what you're saying, E, because Israel at one time, when we read chapter 6 of Exodus in verse 9, Moshe spoke to the children of Israel, but they did not listen to Moshe because of shortness of spirit and from hard slavery. And so I'm asking, what did Israel have to do in order to get to a place just 6 chapters later, probably just a few months, if that, where they were that convinced to do all these things in spite of the signs that were taking place, right? They had to actually, what had to actually take place with them in order for them to really start getting in alignment with these instructions of Moses? Keep in mind what I just read in chapter 6, verse 9. What had to take place?
Well, the ground had to open up and swallow up the part of them, after the golden calf incident.
That's actually in the book of Numbers with Korah. That's a little bit down the road, Ima.
Oh, okay.
That's
I see what you're saying. The Red Sea opening up.
The Red Sea opened up. Yes, ma'am.
Also, they had to actually physically, it looks like they came out.
So we talked about this a little while ago. They had to have a spirit of defiance about them.
Yeah.
Right? They had to actually be convinced that what they were about to embark on had more power associated with it than the power of Egypt. They had to understand that their liberation was going to be a collective effort on top of that. This is not just something individually we're going about seeking. No, this is a national redemption now. So there was a spirit of oneness that had to be upon these people that trumped everything. Ideology is so important to movements that if you don't have an ideology, you're never going to have any nuclear fusion that keeps you together. You're never going to have it. And this is why the mind, this is why the Torah is so important, the Torah in our minds is so important because what that does is it harmonizes us. It unifies us. It gives us one mind. Now, it's unfortunate to say that because when we look out on the landscape, we can see that there's many camps with many different perspectives of Torah. But I ask this, why does that exist? Why do all these perspectives of Torah exist? What's the reason for that?
Ego.
100%. People want to be recognized as opposed to pointing people to the Most High. This is what I say. This is what I say. This is what I. It's not about what we say. It's not about what we even believe. It's about what y'all saying. You're about. But this is about a newness. Israel again had to experience a newness in their hearts, in their minds, because they were broken. And I'm sure all of us in this room can experience some form, can say that we've experienced some form of brokenness. And we had to actually be convinced that what we're about to embark on was going to be more powerful than the brokenness or whatever brought us into that brokenness. So this is a psychology. This is a psychological matter as well as a spiritual matter. And that's the thing about spirituality. Messiah, wake up. Spirituality encompasses our whole psychology. It encompasses our emotional well-being. It encompasses our physical health. Everything is brought into alignment through spiritual consciousness. That's what true spiritual consciousness is supposed to do anyway. Your mind is going to be in top health. Your emotions are going to be in top health. Your body is going to be in top health because your spirit is governing everything, and your spirit as governor of your body and master of your body is going to lead you to what? What does spirit lead you to? No, it doesn't. Spirit always, what true spirit leads you to is one destination all the time. You could say that. He said heaven. But what heaven encompasses what though? Heaven ultimately is about what?
Dwelling with Yah or being with Yah.
And Yah is what? What is Yah?
In your mind, being with
eternal life.
Say that again, Nicola.
Eternal life.
Life. Spirit leads to life. Right? This is what we have to understand. Everything is about life. Yah tells us to choose life. To choose life. Because life and death are before us every day. And we draw closer to one or the other based on the decisions we make. Believe it or not, we invite death or we invite life into our life based on the decisions that we make. And this is what Exodus is showing us. But in order to choose life, guess what has to happen? What has to happen? Say it again.
You have to see death.
Yes. Or something has to die. For life to be proliferate, to proliferate, there has to be some form of death. Death and life are two sides of one coin.
So would you say, well, I guess I'm hearing you say, if you control somebody's spiritual reality or spiritual perception or perception of who they are spiritually, you control them on every act.
Undeniably.
Because that's the foundation of foundations is your spirituality.
It's your essence.
Yeah, and so that's what during slavery, that was the first thing that had to be conquered.
Right.
Your perception of who the Most High was or who your creator was.
Images.
Yeah,
Ideas.
right. So where does your power come from? Or the provider of your power, your creator, who does your creator look like? So that was like the foundation of slavery in itself.
Right.
You had to take, and so it was a reprogramming, but it's important to know that it took place. That was the basis of the reprogramming, was to deprogram who you were spiritually, to disconnect you spiritually.
Well,
and once they were able to do that, then they could just reprogram you into something else totally. But that was the basis.
And see, well, let's flesh this out a little bit. What does spirit manifest as in our being? What does the spirit manifest as? Or how do we identify the spirit in us? What are the spiritual components or the spiritual essences in us?
Your actions, your the words that come out of your mouth.
Okay.
Yes, those things. So your actions, behaviors, what comes out of your mouth, and what you think about.
Exactly.
Say more what you think about because you can think something.
As a man thinks, so he is.
Right.
Amen.
There's a lot of people who don't speak what's really going on inside of them, but really are harboring a lot of venom. But they're good at playing poker, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
They know how to mask and hide themselves, and how not to reveal what they're really feeling and what's going on in them.
And some of it's wisdom too, because sometimes as you grow older, you determine what you need to attach to and what you shouldn't attach to. And some of the things that triggered you at one point in time, they don't anymore.
Right.
So
right.
Right. It's all kind of relative, but you can tell a person's spirit by the fruits of their actions.
And that's the key. There's a phrase that says, what you do speaks so clear that what you say, I cannot hear. So a lot of people, and this is why Yah says, these people serve me with their mouths, but their hearts are far from me. Their minds, their thoughts are far from me. Because if you were thinking about me, well, you would naturally do what is required. It's like any relationship. If you are in a relationship with someone, then you will treat them the way that you feel about them. If you don't really have a feeling or a sentiment about somebody, you're not going to treat them any kind of way that's respectful. So you can tell, I love you. But if you're not behaving in a loving way, you're lying, you're deceiving, you're abusing, right? Then you're going to not be able to experience, that in a harmonious way. And then something's going to have to give. You're going to experience what is the reality. Reality will come to manifest.
And then the thing, people lose respect for you.
Right.
And so you'll feel that pretty quick. I mean, so like some punishments are, it's just right ruling. People will correct you. Which if you're about anything, you should welcome the chastisement or the chastening. Right. But I mean, I shouldn't say about anything because I know I don't necessarily enjoy being criticized, and I'm trying to get to that point, but it's not you know, I guess, I mean, it's because I have to do what I need to do in order to keep my ego in check, and being critical, being able to um, accept criticism graciously is, is key.
Right.
But I think there's a line to everything.
You're right. 100%.
Yeah, so
100%. 100%. So Israel defies, they got this new mind, they're willing to break from their old mental enslavement, their old physical enslavement, because those things are coincidental. They coincide. If you're mentally enslaved, you're physically enslaved. If you're physically enslaved, you're mentally enslaved. So they had to completely break free from that in order to not allow the destroyer to come into their houses and smite them. Because a lot of the times what happens is, again, people are already dead. There's a lot of people spiritually who are already dead because they're not connected to the Most High. And so Egypt, though they were very materially blessed in terms of with, knowledge, they had sciences and things like that, but they weren't connected to the spirit of life. And as a result of that, they were able to do some very horrendous things. And you see that with Israel, even in the past, when Israel was not in alignment with the spirit of life, they carried out some very idolatrous things, and so we have to make sure that what we're connected to is the spirit of life. Because the destroyer only comes to get that which belongs to it. That's what the spirit or the law of, what was that? Reciprocity is all about, or the law of attraction even. We attract that which we are able, to manifest ourselves. But this Passover is powerful. This is an eternal decree. It is a forever decree that's to be carried out, passed down from generation to generation, which is eternal life. And we remember not just the slaughtering of Yah, but we remember the redemption of Yah. We remember Yah setting free the captive, Yah breaking the bonds of enslavement spiritually, mentally, and physically of our ancestors. We noticed that there was a mixed multitude that went out with them as well. But eventually they ended up doing according to the word of Moshe. What was required of Moshe for the people to be convinced that his words were truly of the Most High, though? This is another important thing to think about. What did Moshe have to do? If people are going to believe our words, and we look at Moshe's witness and his example, what was it that he did that we can learn from that will allow for others to believe our word?
Did he have to, he set himself apart.
Okay.
And he was the one that performed acts as well. So he was an example. He was a walking testimony. But I think most importantly, he was an example.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Anyone else?
I was thinking that he was very obedient.
Okay. That's a good one. Having stand up. Obedience. But so how does that transfer to the people? How do the people see this? And what did that translate to?
Well, he was real. He was walking it like he talked it. He aligned himself
There
to
you
what
go.
he was in alignment.
There you go. Be careful, big dude. So the people had to see him as that sign, as that witness. He had to be trustworthy, right? He had to be consistent. He had to demonstrate that what he was saying was, in fact, the reality. And this is what leaders do. And he had to serve. He had to be willing to be with the people and take a risk. And this is the thing that leaders do. Leaders take risks for the people. You think anybody else besides him and Aaron wanted to go and talk to Pharaoh, to the king of Egypt, and tell them, let my people go? In absolute defiance of everything that was making that society at that time successful and prosperous.
Right. And he went before the Most High when the Most High was going to punish the children of Israel, and he begged the Most High to have mercy upon them. And he listened to him. So anybody that can intercede on behalf and stop the wrath of the Most High, you definitely need to
listen to him. Right. Right.
I mean, yeah.
I mean, there's something that we see. Let's go back a little bit. There's something that takes place in Exodus chapter 4, I believe, that he went first. Well, here's the question. Who did Moses go and speak to first? When he went back to Egypt, who did he go and speak with first and foremost?
Aaron, his brother.
Well, let's think about the people. Aaron was.
He spoke to Israelites, to Hebrews.
Indeed, but look at this right here, verse 29. So he meets Aaron because Aaron was to be his spokesperson. Moses was like, you know what? I'm not able to speak anything because I got, a stammering tongue, so on and so forth. And so I can't do this. So Yah gives him Aaron as his prophet, makes him Elohim. But what he does in order, first and foremost, is verse 29 of chapter 4. He gathers together all the elders of the children of Israel. What's the wisdom in doing this?
Because they were attacked, they were in line with the people.
Yes.
They were there. It would be more believable coming from the elders because Moshe was not with them throughout, for a while.
Right.
Who's this person to tell us what to do,
Indeed.
And he also got the elders on his side, aligned more so on his side when he did that. So he bought in by delegating them and giving them authorities, and trusting them, they more so aligned themselves with Moses because he gave them a recognition and put them, at their proper place.
Right.
He exalted them in a sense. And so with that, everybody else will fall in line because their family has to respect that. The families of those elders has to respect that. So it just falls in line.
Exactly. The elders hold that position in society that just resonates the authority.
Right.
When the society is in order. Everything has to be cleared through the elders. And so him going to the elders first and foremost, he knows they're the gatekeepers to the community.
Right.
If the elders give consent and approval to something, it's clear.
And if they give him consent, he's got to go ahead.
Exactly. And this is the order that we need to establish again in our communities to get back to a place where we're able to function holistically, but also in order with power. And this is where, you know, we have a lot of ground to make up, because the elders, you know, they are unfortunately now more fearful of our youth, and the youth don't respect the elders in the way that needs to be respected. Not just everybody, but by and large now these things are taking place because this decomposition in our society has brought forth this disorder. And it's just systemic. It's just about a systemics. That's right. All it's about.
It's done through, what they do is they victimize things, and then they come in on the flip side and disrupt and turn it totally upside down. So like a kid has been bullied or got some wealth, got a whipping by their parents, got some wealth, the school reported, is obligated to report it.
Right.
Or whatever. And then, but it's systematic, but just because one incident happened or whatever, it's through victimization. So like they're able, by victimizing things, they're able to push an evil agenda through, because it's preying upon your emotions of, oh, this is so bad, now we have to stop this, now we have to stop. Oh, somebody committed suicide because they weren't able to play a sport that they wanted to all their life. They wanted to compete with girls. They couldn't, so they commit suicide. So, I mean, now people, I mean, you know, everybody's rights are infringed upon because they don't want anybody to commit suicide. Right. You know, it's just ridiculous. But I'm just saying that victimization is something that's like the leaven that you're talking about. From that little bitty thing, stuff just explodes through.
Right.
But it's done to traumatize people, and then all the rules go out the door. If you know, and they do it all the time. It's just a ploy that, so you have to watch how people control your emotions by making you feel sorry for people all the time. And yes, there's some unfortunate things that happen and you pray about it, but it's not, you know, it's not to turn the world upside down because of, you know, and then you just totally, it's just, so.
No, that's excellent. And the fact that you bring up this leaven again is so important, because that's really what this focus is on, right? It's about getting this leaven out of our bodies. Let's look at what Shaul says, because Apostle Paul has some very, very keen insights about leaven. And so when we engage this, maybe 4, excuse me. What chapter is that?
But also, the thing about the leaven, faith also works the opposite of leaven in a sense.
Say it one more time, I'm sorry.
So how leaven, like sin, for instance, like we were talking about leaven, victimization, jealousy, hate, all that type of stuff, can destroy a community per se.
Right.
But faith works just the opposite as well, though. It can, if you have faith in the Most High or in the right thing, you know, it's just like a faith. You have the faith of a mustard seed. It works just the opposite, and it spreads. You know, so it doesn't just cut just one way. If you have faith, just like if you have faith, well, the Most High wants me to do this business, or you know, just by stepping out on faith, I'm able to do immeasurable things just because I stepped out on faith. You know, just you like when the lady touched just a garment of the Most High's shirt, she knew all she had to do was touch the garment, that she would be healed. Just that faith, just you know, allowed her to be healed.
Truly. So I want to get to this 11. This is chapter 5 of 1 Corinthians, and this is very powerful as commentary. Shaul is really providing commentary to Torah. It's called Drash or Midrash. And he's addressing real life issues in communities that affect the well-being of the collective. And a lot of times we don't look at individual behaviors as impactful to the collective, but it does. He says it is commonly reported that there is whoring among you, and such whoring as is not even named among the Gentiles, so as one to have his father's wife. And of course, we can look at this literally, but this spiritually even is something that is a matter as well. Whoring, of course, we know is idolatry. And you have been puffed up. That's a very keen allusion to leaven. You have been puffed up and did not rather mourn, so that he who has done this deed be removed from among you. This is taking out the leaven, cleansing the leaven. Okay, you up, Messiah? Verse 3, for I indeed, as absent in body but present in spirit, have already judged the one who did this as though I were present. In the name of our Master, Yahushua Messiah, when you are gathered together in my spirit with the power of our Master, Yahushua Messiah, deliver such a one to Satan for destruction of the flesh, in order that his spirit be saved in the day of the Master, Yahushua. That is a profound idea. What does this mean? How do you deliver someone to Satan for destruction of the flesh in order that their spirit be saved? What does that mean?
I'm thinking that, you know, it almost is like when a person has a addiction, you know, they have to hit rock bottom before they're able to come up. You know, the person has to be, sometimes, you know, you can't help them. Sometimes people have to be put out of the home.
There you go.
They get put out of the community. You know, everybody has to push them away because they're not, you know, able to be around people with their behavior or their addiction. And that's the only thing that prayerfully it'll help the person. Or else, like how the scripture says, you know, they'll be turned over to their contrite mind.
That's good. That's good. Hold on for that, Imam. And that's, so say that again.
We gonna reschedule.
Cox and Mayock, Sister Tusilla, and welcome to you as well. Somebody was speaking, I'm sorry.
Love you too. Is it warmer?
No. Yeah.
We can't hear you. You gotta speak up some. And I think sometimes we kind of get some very interesting perspectives of Satan. Satan is still a servant of Yah. Now, he may be adversarial, but that adversarial nature is for a purpose. Satan is a sifter. Satan is he weeds out the elements that are not suitable for the kingdom. But he still functions under the authority of Yah. He may not like Yah, but he has no choice. As a messenger, as an angel, quote unquote, he's still subject to the sovereignty of Yah. And what he does is he antagonizes. So you talked about that antagonist, Brother Eric, that you spoke with earlier. Well, that is for a purpose. It's to see where you stand. Who are you? What do you believe? Or what do you know? Why would you keep that? That's somebody. Well, you obviously don't understand it in its entirety. But Satan does not. He does not want to. Nor does he want you to. Satan cannot touch your soul. He can touch your flesh. You think of what happened with Job. Job got physically touched, but Job did not submit to the will of Satan, and he repented. So if you want to look at destruction of the flesh, that's what that looks like. The book of Job captures this entire principle right here. And sometimes we have to be broken down, just like Ema said, we got to hit rock bottom in order for us to ascend. Unfortunate as it is.
And that's what it means to be born again.
Yes, sir. To be made new.
I mean, it coincides with the rising and the setting of the sun. I mean, it comes up and down. I mean, and that's what life does, really. I mean, it's the cycle of life, really.
Right.
You can't have one without the other. You know, you can't. I mean, and this is what people don't understand. So, if the Most High, he has to show you he's the Most High by one, he allows you to build faith in him. That's what the marking of the blood across the threshold of the door was for. So, and it has to be done. You have to have it within yourself. He gives you free will. He can make you do whatever he wants to do. He doesn't need blood or any of that. This is just for you, gives you the opportunity to build faith in him and make you strong. So he don't need it. He don't need you. He could have left him in Israel. I mean, in Egypt. Totally. Yep. But he took him and he said, well, you know, this is a moment for me to show who I am. And I'm going to let you know everything Pharaoh is going to do to you and everything he's going to say.
Truly so.
Yeah, so he...
You know, I think one thing that really, and for us adults, it's a little different because we've been through life. And I'm just sitting here looking at my boys and I'm thinking like, you know, as young people, the more that we can train them up in the way which they go, the easier that decision and those experiences will be for them because they've already been pretty much like conditioned. And I don't mean conditioned in the sense that they're programmed, but they're conditioned that they're put into a like an athletic position, like an athlete conditions himself in order to compete for his sport, right? So if we're engaging our children and getting them to perform a certain way, that response that they have to those encounters that are meant to detract them will be less of an offensive type of experience. When I mean offensive, it's like they won't be as tempted.
Right.
to subject themselves or to bow to something that they recognize as, out of order.
Or something that's not
Right.
leading to destruction or can lead to.
Exactly. You've taught them what life is. You think about people who are able to discern counterfeit bills. What do they do to know the difference between a real bill and a counterfeit bill?
They studied.
What do they
studied.
study?
They studied the markings. They studied the ink. They studied the paper. They studied everything that deals with money.
Yeah.
And they know the real, the authentic.
Yeah, you got to cross-reference. You have to.
Yeah, cross-reference. Yeah. And sometimes you, if you worked as a cashier, you've received one.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can, once you get it in your
by
hand.
A touch.
Yeah, once you get it in your hand and everything, you know the difference.
So getting our youth to really understand the role of preparing to become adults and making the right decisions, it's a challenge, but it's something that we have to do, and I'm saying this in their earshot because I want them to be drawn into this and to understand that you all have choices to make as you become adults. And the choices that you make now are going to carry over as you become adults. And the more you can stay pure and innocent and what we are calling for this particular festival, unleavened, the easier your life would be as you become older.
If you would have discernment and understand what is of the flesh, what needs to be thrown out, what needs to be kept. It's discernment. What do you allow in your spirit? Sometimes you may get something in your spirit. It may seep in, but you got to know it's bad, and you got to make it, and you got to push it out. So you got to recognize it and push it out. But if you don't have anything nothing to measure, no standard. What you're like a what is it? A boat without a rudder? Is that what it is? Yeah.
Right. No direction.
Right.
It's about direction. So you asked that question. It's about direction. Which direction are you going?
And then, but the world is going like anything goes. Do what thy will. There's no, except who I am. And so, there's no measure at all now.
Right.
There, and this is in the schools. They said 100 kids. This is what the media said. 100 kids walked out of Crossroads Academy to protest legislation, LGBT legislation that's being, introduced at the state level, against LGBT.
Against it?
Yeah,
so they were protesting the legislation that was against LGBTQ.
Yeah. So so these are transgender kids.
Wow.
They say it's like they walked out of school to go down to the county. Now what's interesting, these are state laws, but they go to the county.
Right.
Which doesn't make sense, but they were called down there by this Justice Horn.
Oh, there you go. Wow.
And he's running for state legislator. Not state. He's running for county.
Say loud.
So, but what I'm saying is, what is? I guess my point. I forgot my point. What is popular and everything? What is totally what you need to. I think the leavening part is, get all this. You got to recognize what is and what is not of the Most High. Period.
That's it right there.
And so if you're caught up, if you're in school and you're looking at what these people are doing, and he's like, oh, this is what I need to be doing because this is what's on the news. No, you need to be able to be. It's kind of being a critical thinker, really, as well.
That's everything. That's why I tell the boys, if you do anything, just think.
Yeah,
that's the most important thing you can do. Just think.
Why am I doing this? Or why are we doing this?
Right. Yep. Nicola, I saw your hand. Let me get Nicola to speak. She wanted to say something.
Well, I was basically touching up on what you had said about teaching the kids. It's like I grew up in a typical Southern Baptist church, I guess you can say that. But every morning or every Sunday, my mom would get me up at 6 a.m. or 5:30 a.m. because church started at 6:30. Mm-hmm. And I never, wanted to go. But as a kid, you got to do what mom tells you to do. But ultimately, that kept me from doing other stuff, right. Growing up and getting into trouble and doing a whole lot of other stuff that my friends in school were doing. So it's like, basically what you were saying, you train them up as in how they're supposed to go. And then they wouldn't get into that stuff. They wouldn't do some of the stuff that some kids are out there doing.
Right. Yep. Occupy, how do you occupy someone in activities that are going to develop them, and how is it going to cause them to understand consequences as well?
Yeah.
Because this is what Israel is dealing with here. What we don't see is Israel consequently being enslaved is an effect of a cause that had gone back some generations prior to that, dealing with Joseph, okay? And so these are just repercussions of things. And it may be generational. And what's so crazy is every generation, this is a quote from Frantz Fanon. He wrote, I'll see your hand, Coach Priscilla. Let me just get this quote out. Frantz Fanon said, every generation out of relative obscurity must discover its mission, fulfill it, or betray it. And this is a generational thing because the generations that are brought forth are not to be individualized. There's a collective reality each generation has to discover, keep that out your mouth, that they have to discover and implement as a collective. It's about oneness. But if a generation doesn't see that, then we see the results of it very much today. Coach Priscilla, yes, indeed.
Yes, I was wondering, what is the ultimate reason for allowing Satan to test and to, test us?
Uh-huh.
What is the ultimate purpose?
I believe, and this is just my belief, I must just share this, and anyone else is also able to respond. Satan is the ultimate tester of your free will, right? Like if you have free will, which we do, are we going to serve Yah, or are we going to serve ourselves or whatever cause that is not of Yah? And so Satan is like that sifter. And I had mentioned that just a short while ago. He sifts the righteous from the wicked, so to speak, because, excuse me, he, as tempter, he presents the polar opposite of Yah's will. So it's like when we look at what Romans is saying, Romans is talking about how, we would not know sin except Torah said, you shall not do so and so. But Satan just presents to us, what, here it is. What then shall we say? Is the Torah sin? Let it not be. However, I did not know sin except through the Torah, for also covetousness I knew not if the Torah had not said you shall not covet, but sin, having taken the occasion through the command, did work in me all sorts of covetousness, for apart from Torah, sin is dead. So the devil's work is to lead us away from Yah and to lead those who are not of Yah away from Yah into sin and death. And I would say, in my esteem, in my estimation of what this is all about, is what Satan's purpose is to divide the wicked from the righteous. So when you deal with, like even with Passover, Passover presents the dual reality of, do you serve Yah or do you not serve Yah? Do you obey Yah and keep the commandments, observe the festival as he has commanded us, or do you not? All these feast days are for that. I hope that responds somewhat. If anybody else has something to say, please add on. Why don't you get up and go just like you did last time?
I think his purpose, kind of to piggyback on what you said, but maybe to add a little to it, but it also helps you when you conquer Satan, his temptations, when you conquer them, you're able to build resistance within yourself.
Right.
So you're stronger against temptation as well. And the things that once tempted you or the things that you once did, you're not feeding that appetite anymore. So you're starving it out. And you're becoming more enlightened, you're becoming more in tune, you're saving more money. I mean, it's just so much that you're doing. I mean, and it manifests itself here on earth, that are tangible. Because you don't do the things that you once did. You don't have the temptations that you once did. So just say, like, if you had an addiction to porn, for instance, and you was all over that on the internet, you would, for one, you would disrupt your finances. If you were married, totally destroy them. You know, just through that addiction, through gambling, through alcohol, whatever it is, you can totally destroy, your finances, period.
Right.
So I think what it does is it just helps you be able to conquer your flesh more and more. And he allows you to do that. Without him tempting you, you're never able to overcome. You're never great unless you are, just like a boxer, for instance. They say Sugar Ray Robinson was so great, or Muhammad Ali was so great because he fought everybody.
Right.
They fought the greatest ones, the people that were on their level. So if you don't conquer nothing, David wouldn't have been nothing if he hadn't defeated Goliath. That's what made him so, everybody was like, he killed all those people, and plus on top of Goliath, hey, he's the man.
Right.
He conquered. I mean, so that's how you prove that's his purpose, really.
And you think about it, on top of that, resistance. If you don't have resistance, let's say you're working out. If you don't have resistance, how are you going to get stronger? If you don't have competitors, how are you going to be the champion? How are you going to maintain your champion?
No. Yeah, I really appreciate the answer and the feedback. And I was thinking also that, when you make a statement or you're presenting a discourse, you begin with an end in mind. And you state like the creator, he was presenting these laws, but the first thing he says is, thou shalt love Yahuwah with all your heart, all your might, all your soul, all your strength, right? And everything else that follows points to loving him, goes back to, how are we going to do this? How are we going to love Yah with all our heart, all our mind, all our soul, all our strength? So everything that we do, we're supposed to have him in mind, actually.
Right.
Not necessarily have I overcome this, but as we are assessing ourselves in reference to referring back to what Yah desires us to do with him, you know. So I'm thinking that the ultimate goal of testing is to see how much we love Yah.
Yes.
You know,
right.
It points right back to our Creator, you know, because that's who we're born from, and we severed our relationship with him, and so we have to get back there. And so because of that, he has set rules in place to see how much we want to get back there.
Right.
You know, so I'm thinking the testing is basically to assess ourselves according to what he has presented to us in the flesh. These laws are fleshly. They're not. These laws are fleshly, and we are fleshly, but guided by it helps us to climb on that spiritual level of, do we love Yah? How do we love Yah? By doing what he says to do, and then we, in as a result, we become that spirit that Yah, you know, the spirit of love is within us too. You know, I don't know how to say it much more.
No, that's it.
But in actuality, he wants us to love him with all our hearts, and then he is presenting these things, these laws, to us as a result of, to test us, actually, because without those laws, we have no tests.
Right.
Yeah. So
right.
That's basically what I was thinking when you guys were talking. I was thinking, that came into my spirit. All right.
Hallelujah. Torah Rabbah for that, Nicole. Excellent. And just really to kind of bring this into a focus, you know, as we enter into this new season, you think about what takes place. You know, people are sowing seeds, but what takes place when seeds are sown? You also have rodents and what do they call them? Just pests, right? Pests seek to rob your seeds. And so this is why verse 42 of Exodus 12 is so important. And you think about even what the master told his 3 disciples in the garden to watch and pray. But it's a night to be observed unto Yah for bringing them out of the land of Mizraim. This night is unto Yah to be observed by all the children of Israel throughout all the generations. Now, this is about, this word here is shomrim. Like if we go to the Blue Letter Bible and we look up this word here, we will see that this is about being hyper vigilant. And this is why Satan, this is when Satan actually comes into the scope, because he knows if we're not observing, then we're able to get God. And so this is about being observant. Shom, it says simmering. But it is a vigil. It is a night watch, right? Shemur means an observance, but it comes from a word, 8104, that means to hedge about, to guard, to protect, to attend to be ward, to be circumspect, for these days are evil. Redeem the time, right? To take heed, to keep self, to make a mark, to look narrowly, to observe and to preserve, to regard, to reserve, to save yourself, to be sure, to wait, and to watch. This is what Yahushua was saying, watch and pray. Because why? The enemy, the destroyer, if you will, is busy. Remember, it says Satan roams around like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may destroy. To seek, kill, and destroy. And when we go into Job 1, the day came to be that the sons of Elohim came to present themselves before Yah. And Satan also came among them. How is Satan with the sons of Elohim?
Because he has a job also.
He has a job. He has to still submit to his superior.
He has to be accountable.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Yah said to Satan, from where do you come? And Satan answered Yah and said, from diligently searching in the earth and from walking up and down in it. Well, what are you searching? What is he searching for?
Trying to see who he can devour, who he can.
Exactly. It's like a predator. When a predator is seeking his prey, he lurks first, or they lurk. They notice who's weak. They notice who's infirm. They notice who's unprotected. They notice who's uncovered. They notice everything. And then when they hone in on their prey, they make their lunge. This is what Satan is searching for. But this is why it behooves us to be watchful and prayerful, especially during this season. Because this is when this newness is supposed to come about. If we find ourselves not operating in a new mind, in a new spirit, in a new way during these seasons, well, we got to really examine ourselves as well. And that's what 1 Corinthians 5 is talking about. Like, you know, we have to examine ourselves and make sure we're worthy of eating this Passover. So this night of observance before Yah is about being vigilant. And then when you notice what the laws of this Passover are required, no one's uncircumcised can eat it. And that's just not a physical thing. This is about spiritual circumcision. This is about having your heart circumcised. This is about being a new creature. And we have to examine ourselves to assure that the old culture, the old ways that we once had, those things are buried. The old man is dead. That's what the immersion is all about. That's what Israel coming out of the Red Sea was all about. That was the birth or the rebirth of a nation. Don't do that, man. That was the rebirth of a nation. We all come out of water for our birth. Not with him. I can't sit together, you know. So when we look at these laws, uncircumcised cannot eat it, right? It's eaten in one house. Don't take any flesh outside. Don't break a bone of it. What's this about? What does this mean? No, you are to not break any bone of it. This is about unity. This is about oneness. Right? When we have broken bones, we have damaged structures. This is also about the mitzvot, the commandments. We're not to break any of the mitzvot, the structure of our whole existence. And this is what keeps us unblemished. This is what keeps us unleavened. And this is, again, the unification. This is about ideology. all the congregation of Israel are to perform it on the same night, during the same time. This is the oneness that should prevail amongst this nation. This is a national reality. But everybody, just like in the Parashat Terumah, everybody has to contribute to this reality. Everybody has to contribute. And yes, colonization is an aim of the kingdom of heaven. But the type of colonization that we go about, it's not campaigns of bloodshed. It's campaigns of demonstrating our righteousness to the nations, and the nations being able to discern Yah's presence on us. I'm gonna kind of fast forward. This is what Yahushua was praying for. He says,
It may be one.
Father, I desire that those whom you have given me might be with me where I am, so that they see my esteem which you have given me, because you loved me before the foundation of the world. O righteous Father, indeed, the world did not know you, but I knew you, and these knew that you sent me. Now I've made your name known to them and shall make it known, so that the love with which you love me might be in them, and I in them. So this is how the world comes to recognize who Yah and who his Messiah is, through his people. We are to demonstrate the love of Yah and the righteousness of the Messiah to the world, so that the world becomes convinced that Yah does truly live. Is your hand up again, Drusilla?
No. I think that.
I'm gonna lower your hand.
Okay.
And Imam Leo Raya, yes, ma'am.
And Toda for that, because that gave me so much to think about. This feast, I think, for me personally, I had a lot of thought about, as we always do, talk about community. And it's difficult to, my husband and I, we do this, and now our family, everyone is an adult. So now it's up to them what their choices are. We've done everything to show them. We speak about it all the time.
Right.
Every day, if you get me on the phone, I'm going to always go to the scripture. So we've done these things, and we know we need to have faith, that you've taught them, and they will return. Prayerfully, you want to see it in your lifetime. But it is difficult, as you were saying, with the not having the elders, the eldership.
Right.
I guess my thought is a lot of the elders at some point in time, which we all may know, decided to go to the land. And sometimes I think that left a void. I could be wrong, because I don't totally know, because I've only been in the faith for a certain amount of time, but
right.
At some places I see, I've thought of this, that we do need the eldership. We do need that camaraderie and that flow. And that's how we will move forward, because that's been a difficulty, not having a place. Now, we're here in the Chicagoland area. I can't say that there aren't places, but it's just makes it difficult. And I'm thankful for our fellowship. It's been a awesome blessing. I thank you for being obedient to Yah,
Hallelujah.
because you are filling the gap.
Praise Yah. And you all are as well, because it would be nothing if you all weren't here. So it takes that collective effort again. This is what it just demonstrates. This is the unity of the spirit. Even with our numbers, which I'm not despising at all. I love, our intimacy. I think that it's going to lend more to our growth and development, because we can be more clear and more, intensive on what it is that we're discussing, because we have such, intimate group. That's important. Now, what's so deep about Pesach and all the holy days, all the Moedim or the Chagim, is that these are universal realities for those who are willing to sojourn with us, right? Of course, we know Israel, and you hear people say this, well, that's a Jewish thing. That's just a Jewish thing. It's just an Israel thing. It's not meant for the Gentiles. Well, here we see the refutation to that statement. Because it's not an Israel thing, this is a Yah thing. If we serve the true and living creator of heaven, earth, sea, and all that is in them, we understand that Yah appointed these things for Israel. Israel didn't come up with these on their own. So Israel was given these instructions to go and to be a blessing to the rest of the nations. Why? Because Israel is supposed to be in alignment with Yah. Being in alignment with Yah creates harmony. It creates a synergy that allows for the blessings of heaven to rain down on earth. So when we see a stranger sojourning with us performing the Pesach, it's because they have become one mind with Israel, as Israel has become one mind with Yah, which is all Yahushua is saying in his high priestly prayer. Make them one with me as I am one with you, so we all may be one together. But in order to become one, we have to be transformed in mind and heart. And understand there's one standard for everybody. So you hear people talking about, there's many paths to the summit. Yeah, that's true. In the sense that, you may get to the summit through these different paths, but all paths, you ain't gonna make it up all paths. But what Yah has done is given everybody an opportunity to make it up this one path for everybody. I hope you're paying attention. This is why it says there's one Torah for the native born and for the stranger who sojourns among you. And again, if the world does not know Yah, whose fault is that?
Israel.
Huh?
Israel.
Israel's fault, 100%. This is why Yah says that we blaspheme his name amongst the Gentiles, because we're not representing the kingdom or our king. We're not keeping the commandments. We're not being faithful to Yah. We're doing what we want to do. Anything else from Exodus 12?
I guess we are messengers also. We have a job to do.
Undeniably. Undeniably. Undeniably.
And then we are accountable. And when we go before Yah, just like the sons of Yah go before him, he wants to know, what have we done?
Amen.
What was our job? Have we accomplished what he sent us to do? So.
Amen, amen. In fact, he calls us envoys. He called us envoys, right? All matters are from Elohim, right? Well, let's go here. If anyone is in Messiah, he is a new creature. He is a renewed creature. This is what Pesach is all about. The old matters have passed away. See, all matters have become renewed. And all matters are from Elohim. What's wrong with you? Who has restored us to favor with himself through Yahushua Messiah, and has given us the restoration, the service of restoration to favor. This is our responsibility now, to bring favor to the world and restore them to this favor with Yah. That is, that Elohim was in Messiah, restoring the world to favor unto himself, not reckoning their trespasses to them, and has committed to us the word of restoration to favor. So this is now that messengership that you were speaking about, Colt. Therefore, we are envoys on behalf of Messiah. This is a powerful word. What does envoy mean? Envoy is a minister plenipotentiary accredited to a foreign government who ranks between an ambassador and a minister resident, a person delegated to represent one government in its dealings with another. A messenger, a representative. So we have to represent our Father on behalf of Messiah as though Elohim were pleading through us. We beg to the world on behalf of the Messiah, repent pretty much. Be restored to favor with Elohim. But he made him who knew no sin to be sin for us, so that in him we might become the righteousness of Elohim. But that is exactly what we are, we are messengers. We are envoys. We are minister plenipotentiaries. That's a heck of a word. Plenipotentiary. A person, especially a diplomat, invested with the full power of independent action on behalf of their government, typically in a foreign country. That's why Yah says we're not of this world. We're in it, but we're not of this world. We have a different set of jurisdictional powers, having full power to take independent action on behalf of our Father in heaven. So you can say we're diplomats, we're representatives, we're ambassadors, we're ministers, we're emissaries, right? We're envoys, we're legates. And that is why it's so important to understand that when we're dealing with this scripture, we're not dealing with religion. We're dealing with political science. We're dealing with governmental realities. We're dealing with a governmental reality. The kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of Yah. In Passover, Shavuot, Teruma, Yom Kippur, Hag Sukkot, Shabbat, all these are essential staples to the kingdom. They're essential memorials to the kingdom that mark an opportunity for us to become more aligned with our King. Much more. He was asking if we align with the 10 Commandments, we'll be more aligned with Yah, undeniable. But the 10 Commandments are just like the Bill of Rights. It just gives us the basic amendments that we need to understand how to function. Again, the so-called Old Testament was called the Tanakh. It has 613 commandments in there. It has 613 commandments in there. The New Commandment, the New Testament, has over 1,050. There's 1,050 plus commandments in the New Testament. That's because man needs corrective actions. We need to be corrected because our behavior, our nature is so out of order. That means the more corrupt we are, the more guilty we are of things, take that out your mouth. What is in your mouth? The more guilty we are of breaking commandments and being unlawful, the more laws we need to correct it and get in order. So as we deal with the book of Joshua, in the 6th chapter particularly, you're dealing with circumcision, but you're also dealing with the elevation of leadership, rank and file leadership. And this is why it's so important to understand what group-centered leadership is about. Israel was a democratic, and I'm not, excuse me, a theocratic anarchy. Even though they had judges and leaders, everybody was responsible for themselves. Everybody in Israel has the capacity to rule themselves first and foremost, has the responsibility to rule themselves first and foremost. The most clear expression of that is with Gideon. Gideon was like, I'm not going to rule over you, nor my son's going to rule over. We have one king, and that's Yah. Rule yourselves rightly. If we were set free from bondage, why would you put one person over you who can just at a snap of a finger put you back in that bondage? And we see that even with King Solomon. King Solomon conscripted labor. Yeah, it was for the temple, but he had people do things that may not have been their exact will. And again, the temple was fine, but that wasn't Yah's design. What did Yah tell David when David was wanting to make him a temple? Anybody remember what Yah told David?
Your hands are bloody or something like that.
His hands were bloody, but before even that, shall I dwell in a building made with hands?
Oh, that's right.
Right? So he's like, you think a building is suitable for me when I wanted to take up residency in you? That's called a downgrade. But because of Yah's favor and his mercy, he allowed for that to take place. Just like he allowed for them to get a king, just like he allowed for them to make divorce, just like he allowed for Israel to eat meat. None of those things were Yah's design in the beginning. Just like he allowed for Israel to be redeemed from enslavement. That wasn't Yah's design. That wasn't his will. And so Passover is about being in ultimate alignment. You don't need no more water. You don't need any more. You've been just going crazy. The Passover is about ultimately being in alignment with the will of Yah as a new creature. That new creature that we are becoming has to find itself in ultimate obedience to our Father's will in heaven. But we have to know what that is. If we don't know what that is, then we're going to cause ourselves to fall short. This is not about superstitious belief. This is about knowing. Yah wants us to know him and to have the knowledge of Elohim increase in us. If our ancestors did not know what to do for Pesach, they would have been destroyed. If they did not know what time it was, if they did not know the season, they would have been smitten, destroyed.
So is this battle about who we're going to allow to take up residence in our temple? Is it Yah or is it Satan is the battle, what is battle is about?
It's a great question. I mean, you got to keep in mind Passover, well, just even the 10 plagues leading up to the moment of Passover was a demonstration of Yah's sovereignty over every other kingdom, especially the most supreme kingdom on earth at that time. So his judgment rendered the most powerful empire on earth powerless. And so you have a choice to make. Just like the members of that kingdom, the citizens of Egypt, they had a choice to make. And many of them chose to come out with Israel. According to the narrative, there was a mixed multitude that came out amongst that. But there were also, which is not really spoken of in scripture, there was also Israelites who stayed in Egypt. You have communities that are there to this day that are, descendants of the Israelites who chose to stay. Alexandria, I believe in Elephantine. There's several communities where, they're more crypto Jews today because of what Islam has done. But there were many communities of Israelites in Mitzrayim at one time. In fact, during the days of Maimonides, after the Alhambra decree had him banished from Portugal, or Spain, he died in Alexandria because he had family there. But yes, it does come down ultimately to who we choose to allow to take up residency, or who we're offering ourselves to. It's not about choosing, who we are offering ourselves to. Who are we serving? Who are we worshiping? Because who we're worshiping is who's going to occupy our bodies. So we see here Joshua has people recircumcised because they were not circumcised at one point in time because of the many that had been rebellious in the wilderness, right? That's chapter 6. Let's go back to chapter 5, excuse me. And so this was about preparing the people for the Passover. They had not kept the Passover in the wilderness for years because people were not circumcised. Only until they came into the land and got circumcised were they able to do so. All the people who came out had been circumcised, but all the people who were born in the wilderness on the way as they came out of Mitzrayim had not been circumcised. And this is for many different reasons. It's for rebellious reasons. It's for sanitary and hygienic and health reasons. But nonetheless, this generation was not able to keep Passover until they were circumcised. So you had grown men being circumcised, which lets us know it's never too late to be renewed. They had to remove the foreskin from their member. And this is how this reproach is rolled away. This is redemptive for Israel. This circumcision, this national circumcision was redemptive. Today I have rolled away the reproach of Mitzrayim from you. So Gilgal means to roll away. And that's how the children of Israel who are in Gilgal performed the Passover on the 14th day of the month at evening on the desert plains of Jericho. Jericho has two different meanings. It means the month, and it also has a point of being able to breathe or to receive understanding. Just as the breath of the Most High into the nostrils of Adam gave him consciousness, when Mashiyach did the same thing, take it off right. he was able to give them comprehension of the scriptures. It's also interesting to note the manna ceased when they started eating of the stored grain of the land. Yah's favor, not to say he did not favor them, but his direct favor was uplifted. And now he was like, you have to produce for yourself. There comes a point in time when Yah removes the training wheels in our renewal. And he's now expecting for us to walk as mature individuals. And that's what perfection is really all about. It's about having the maturity to do what is required of us. The maturity to have situation appropriateness, to understand situation appropriateness, to have discipline, to know the orders that we're to walk in, to be obedient and subject ourselves to the right authority, and to not be emotionally led. Any thoughts from Joshua 5? Don't worry about it. You got somewhere to go? Where? You're not going. Okay. All right, we're going to now go to John 17. This is the high priestly prayer of Mashiyach before he was offered up. This was pretty much on Passover. This is when, say that again.
Go back to Joshua 5 right quick.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we see that they had they kept the Passover, right?
Right.
And then the day after that Passover is the high holy day, no working day. They got manna.
Right.
And then the day after that is when it started the old milk cup, because they ate out the first fruit of the land.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now, when I was looking at that, what comes to my mind is Yahushua with you know how when the Christians be like, well, how they got 3 days and 2 nights, and we I've been saying that for years, but then when I look at that, that's almost like with Yahushua being the first fruit.
Okay.
Not necessarily all 3 days and not necessarily all 3 nights, but see that manna stopping that morning. Could that have something to do with that 3 days and 2 nights, or having that calculation they get?
That's a great question. I'd have to look into that more. That's an interesting point. I'm not certain about that. I'll have to definitely look into that more. It's an interesting perspective. The manna ceased on the day after they had eaten the stored grain of the land. The children of Israel no longer had manna, but ate the food of the land of Canaan that year. This is that's an interesting point. I'm not certain about that. That's interesting. I have to look into that more.
Okay.
Hold out for that.
All right.
And of course, I mean, we could say, the captain of the host of Yah. Who do we understand to be the captain of the host of Yah?
Michael.
Exactly, Michael. Michael is the archangel who is the host of heaven, the prince of the armies of heaven. As the prince, he is the captain. He runs the armies of Yah. Now, what I read, his sworn was drawn in his hand, was because he was somewhat upset with Yahushua, because the people were not circumcised, and because they were uncircumcised, they were not able to study Torah the way that they were supposed to. This is just what some commentary says about that. Matter of fact, it says that the sword was drawn as a result of him not teaching the people to engage in Torah study. The man reassured Joshua that he was not an enemy, but an angel who had come to guarantee success in the battle of Jericho. According to the sages, the drawn sword signified that the angel was angry with Joshua, for in the press of entering the land and performing the circumcisions and so on, Joshua had allowed the people to neglect their Torah study. So as a result of the neglection of Torah study, he had his sword drawn because he was like, these people are getting a little buck. We got to get them back in order. So now he has him starting over, because this is what started off the process with Moshe. He took his sandals off and had to relearn who the Most High was. This somewhat relates. I wonder why.
Is that what happened? Eden?
Say that one more time, Nicole.
I was wondering if that's what happened in Eden, like the swords. There were messengers with swords around.
Mm-hmm.
So
it was a little different. He was coming to be a succor to them. He was coming to assist them in their battles against Jericho. The seraphim, I believe they were seraphim, that guarded Eden were not allowing Adam and Hawa to come back into the garden because of their disobedience. So it's similar, but it's different. They had different missions and different purposes. But it's akin. I can see where you can see some similarities in it, but it is a little different. So as we wrap this up, we're dealing with now, again, this high priestly prayer of Yahushua. I would say that's in Gethsemane before he was betrayed. And it's interesting to note because, again, there is a delineation that he makes between him and his and those who are otherly related. Because he says a very powerful thing that many people don't want to deal with. He talks about his disciples. I pray for them. I do not pray for the world. That is a very profound statement to be made. What does this mean? Let's first unpack this. When he says, I do not pray for the world, what is he saying?
I feel like he means the worldly.
100%. 100%. Those outside of the scope of Torah. Sit up, please. Those who have a aversion to Yah in righteousness. So we hear, everybody's a child of God. No, they're not. I beg to differ. Because we can go back to Genesis and see there's a clear delineation of humanity. Some of these seeds have nothing to do with Yah. In fact, some of these seeds are very adversarial to Yah and his people. The serpent has a seed, and the serpent is intent on So let's take a look at this. I put enmity between you and the woman, speaking of the serpent, and between your seed and her seed. He shall crush your head, and you shall crush his heel. This is the same serpent that we read of in Revelation 12. Right? So there was a woman clad with the sun, with the moon under her feet, on her head crown of 12 stars, but another sign in heaven, a great fiery red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns. This is the serpent's seed, right? And he was wanting to devour the child as soon as it was born. His tail draws a third of the stars of the heavens and throws them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was about to give birth to devour her child as soon as it was born, right? But who is this dragon? And that great dragon was thrown out, that serpent of old, called the devil and Satan. So it's the same serpent. Shalom Aleichem and Cox and Mayock, Sister Faith. We're wrapping up, actually just going over Yahushua's prayer in the Garden of Gethsemane before he was betrayed, about how he was not praying for the world. And we wanted to make a clear delineation between Yah's people and the world. So when you hear people saying, well, everybody's a child of God, that is not a true statement. In fact, we went to Genesis 3 and saw that there is a seed of the serpent that is in extreme hostility against Yah and his people. There are adversaries. That's all Satan means. You have adversarial spirits that are intent on destroying the righteous, the light, snuffing out the light. Darkness always intends to snuff the light. This is so important for us to understand as we trek in this world. We have to understand we are truly not of this world system. We're not supposed to be of this world system. We have a kingdom to manifest ourselves. If you drink right, you don't have to do all that. And Yahushua makes continual mention of his Father's name, starting at verse 6. And this name is the key to the authority that he has over all flesh. This name. Stop. And the key to it all is obedience. I revealed your name to the men whom you gave me out of the world. They were yours, and you gave them to me, and they have guarded your word, which he spoke. But he lets us know his teachings are not his own, but his who sent me. And so when Yahushua is rejected, just like he said, you're not rejecting me, you're rejecting him who sent me. I'm just a messenger. And this lets us know that there is hierarchy, there's order, that we too have to subject ourselves to the order that our master was under. Our master directly is Yahushua, the Son. The Son gives us access to the Father. Stop. And these are the words which we are to speak. This is the empowerment that we have. This is the prophecy that we have to utter. And again, prophecy is nothing more than the revelation of the will of Yah. The conditional predictions are a result of whether or not someone will keep Yah's will in his word. And to demonstrate that Yah is El, the prophet will declare some sort of tragedy that will take place upon people not repenting and returning to Yah's word. That will come to pass according to the word of the prophet. But that is very much not the focus. The focus is the will of Yah. And he has left us in the world praying that we be kept from the wicked one so that we can go about fulfilling this plan. He allowed us to come into existence in order to work the work that we have to undergo. Ima Sharon, yes, ma'am.
I just, excuse me. I just want to, I've enjoyed so much. I'm sorry I did. I'm tired. So I kind of napped off a little bit, but I'm so grateful to what I've already heard. And just grateful when you read this John 17 and thankful that we also carry that message. And it's important that we carry the message the way Yahshua presented it. Mm-hmm. Not adding our own words and doing like we want to do. And speaking the truth. And one thing I've learned over the years is stop answering people with what I think I know. Go to the script. Mm-hmm. If you got to fight, fight with Yah. Fight with that word. You won't be able to fight with me. I am so glad that we have this opportunity to carry this wonderful message. And I pray, and that's been a prayer for myself. You know, we can pray for everybody, but I do pray a lot of times for myself that I carry it right. It's important. People today are going on just like they did in Noah's day, doing like they want to do, not seeing the message through the sky. And nature is really talking right now. Mm-hmm. And we need to be paying attention. I'm so glad. I don't know everything about the moon, but I know when it gets to be the 15th day of the moon, of Yah's month. I know that. Right. I know the new moon. And I know when the moon and stuff, I'm looking at the sky. I'm looking to see the changes. I'm looking at how the animals and the birds are really acting up. They really acting up. But some of them, like the different squirrels and things, are either they acting up or they know you. They know you in your home. They know what you about. And I know that may sound crazy to some people, but it's just the truth. They know. I know when the birds are thirsty because when I be giving them water, but I know when they sit there and I come near, they don't move because they know what I'm about to do. I'm just grateful for how Yah has blessed us. Just blessed us with his word. And that's all I've been quiet, but I really just wanted to have that to say that let us continue to look at the signs. Know that it's gonna be, we don't know when it be, might be in my lifetime, it might not be, but we know that he's coming. And you need to be ready. Yes, if there's never a time you thought about being ready, it's time to be ready. Right now. I think about last night, my daughter was very sick yesterday. And I wasn't pacing, but I still had that anxiousness because I knew it was Passover. And I know that she's not my firstborn. I went through that with my firstborn. They told me that she wasn't going to make it. But she did make it over 30 more years. And I'm grateful through the Passover. So I was kind of a little anxious. I really was. I can't lie about it. But through this day, she's still here. And I'm grateful.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know y'all's plans, or, people try to tell you did this and that because your children might be sick or you might be going through this and that. All I know is this, is that we have to have faith. We have to be able to speak the word in season and out of season. But to be ready, I tell my daughter, I don't know what her illness going to do, but be ready.
Yes.
Any of us, be ready. We don't know. We can step outside and be hit by a bus, but are you ready?
My goodness.
Those are the things that you have to ask yourself, because you can't really see into the future. You don't know. When you look out your window, you might not be able to see around the corner, but you need to be ready.
Continue.
If we ever thought about it, this is the time to search ourselves. Like the scripture told about when you take the communion, take his blood and to take his flesh. You need to think about it before you put that matzah in your mouth and drink. You got to think about it. Are you worthy? Can you take it this time? For a couple of years, I couldn't take it because I knew what was in my heart. And I wasn't going to be so silly enough to go ahead and take it because somebody was looking look at me all you want. If you unworthy, you need not take it either.
That's what it says.
So we just have to think about it, because so many times we be in a way that seemeth right. And if it's never time to begin to search yourself, see where you're at, what's going on, because he's full of forgiveness. He just don't like those repeat offenders.
Mama.
That's all I wanted to say. And I'm sorry it takes so long, but
perfect, Ima.
I'm just grateful.
Your wisdom is always like welcome and received. And I just appreciate personally your voice and your wisdom and insight. It's always on point. You must have told out for that. Hallelujah. So as we do with this examination that Ima's talking about, I want to turn to 1 Corinthians 11 and just kind of wrap this up. All this does come down to being at one, because what we have to do is we have to hold each other accountable, ourselves first, to the standards and expectations that Yah has for us. But we have to have the expectancy. We have to have the righteousness. We have to have the set apartness that Yah has established through his instructions, through his Torah. Because this is what is going to unite us. This is what's going to also cause us to overcome. But we have to have endurance. But this is what the apostle says. He says, I received from the master that which I also delivered to you. That the master Yahushua, in the night in which he was delivered up, took bread, and having given thanks, he broke it and said, take, eat. This is my body, which is broken for you. Do this in remembrance of me. In the same way, also the cup after supper, saying, this cup is the renewed covenant in my blood. As often as you drink it, do this in remembrance of me. For as often as you eat this bread and drink this cup, you proclaim the death of the master until he comes. so that whoever should eat this bread or drink this cup of the master unworthily shall be guilty of the blood and body of the master. But let a man examine himself, and so let him eat of that bread and drink of that cup. For the one who is eating and drinking unworthily eats and drinks judgment to himself, not discerning the body of the master. Because of this, many are weak and sick among you and sleep. For if we were to examine ourselves, we would not be judged. But when we are judged, we are disciplined by the master, that we should not be condemned with the world. Right? So this is what this comes down to. This is why we're not of the world, because the world has a judgment coming to it that they don't even know is coming. It's much like Noah and the flood. They did not expect such a calamity to unfold because they were blind. They were blinded by sin. They were walking dead and did not know what the will of the Most High was, which is what made them dead. But we who are alive, we who are being renewed and being restored, it's our responsibility to share that with those who desire life. Because some who are dead don't want to be dead, but they just don't know that they're dead. And this Passover is come to prepare us to encounter the presence of the Most High. Because it tells us in Hebrews that no one will see the Most High without being set apart, without being unblemished, without being unleavened. If you're unleavened, we're not going to see the Master. Sinless. If you are sinless, you will see the Master. If you have sin in your life, you're not going to see the Master. You're being disobedient to your parents. You're being rebellious. You're not in truth. If you're telling lies, that's not in truth. You can if you don't repent and get it right. You will burn in the lake of fire. Hell is not real. Gehenna. That's biblical. Hell is not biblical. That's Greek mythology. Any closing thoughts before we go ahead and close out with prayer? Stop. This enough. Put it up. Put it up. You this close, dude. You this close, for real. Because you're being disrespectful right now. Can you go get your mother so we can close out in prayer, please? Go get your mother. She sleep. No. No. All right. If there's no other comments, we will go ahead and close out. So we will get into a spirit of prayer with the Aleinu and the Kaddish and the Aharonic benediction. In the spirit of prayer, hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Aleinu l'shabeach le'adon hakol Lateit gedula la yetzer breshit shelo asanu kegoy haratzot velo samanu b'mishpachot hanama shalo sam hachenu kahem vegoralenu kakol hamonam ve'anachnu korim u'mishtacholim u'modim lifnei melech melki hamalakim hakadosh baruch hu Shehu note shamayim veyesod oretz, umeshov yakra'o b'shamayim ima'al, u'shechinat ozo b'govahai boromim, hu Eloheinu einod, emet makenu efes zolato, הכתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום והשובותה אל לבבך, כי יהוה הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל ועל הארץ מדחת עינות. אל כן נקווה לך יא אלוהינו לראות מהרה בתפארת עוזך, להעביר גוללים מן הארץ והללים קרות יכרתון. לכן אעלם והמלכות שדי וכל בני בשר יקראו בשמך, להפונות אלוקי קודשי ארץ, יכירו ויודעו כל יושבי את הבא, כי לך תקרא כל ברק תשבע כל לשון, לפניך יא אלוהינו יקראו ויפעלו, לכבוד שמך יקר יתנו, ויקבלו כולם את על מלכותך ותמלוך אליהם מהרה לעולם ועד. כי המלכות שלך היא, ולעולמי אתמלוך בכבוד, ככתוב בתורתך, ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר, וחיה יהוה למלך על כל הארץ. ביום ההוא יהיה יהוה אחד, ושמו אחד.
Coming to us a unique destiny. We bend the knee and bow, acknowledge the supreme sovereign, the Holy One exalted, who spread out the heavens and laid the foundation of the earth, whose glorious abode is in the highest heavens, whose mighty dominion is in the loftiest height. This is our El, there is no other. In truth, El alone is our ruler, as it is written in the Torah. Thank you. Okay. El alone is our ruler, as it is written in the Torah. Know this day and take it to thy heart. The Adonai is El in heaven above and upon earth beneath. There is no other. And so we hope in you, Adonai, soon to see your splendor, that you will sweep idolatry away, that false gods will be utterly destroyed, and that you will perfect the world by your sovereignty so that all humanity will invoke your name, and all the earth's wicked will return to you repentant. Then all who live will know that to you every knee must bend, every tongue pledge loyalty to you, Adonai. May all bow and worship. May they give honor to your glory. May everyone accept your dominion. Reign over all, soon and forever in all time. Sovereignty is yours in glory, now and forever. Thus it is written in your Torah, Adonai reigns forever and ever. Such is written in the prophetic assurance, Adonai shall be acknowledged ruler of all the earth. That day shall Adonai be one, in his name
יתגדל ויקדש שמי רבה, אמן. ויעמד דברה קרותי וימלך מלכותי, וחייכון וימיכון, וחיי לכל בית ישראל, בגלה בזמן קריב וימרו, אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם ולעמיה, יתברך, יתברך וישתבח, ויתפאר ויתרומן ויתנשא, ויהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי דקודשה בריחו, אלא מן כל ברכתה ושתירתה, תושבקתה ונקמתה דמירן בעמה וימרו, אמן. יהי שלמה רבה משמיים וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל וימרו, אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל וימרו, אמן. יברך יהוה וישמרך, יאר יהוה פניו אליך ויחונך, יהוה פניו אליך וישים לך שלום, בשם משיח יהושע, ברוך השם, הללויה, hallelujah, hallelujah. Amen and amen. Hallelujah. Chag Sameach. Mighty blessings upon you all.